20th of November. I'm Dana. Hope you're doing well. She did a big fire today at United Nations. They have a tent. It's the worst kind of fire to have a big tent. We're going to start it off with a song called Meltdown Queen. Corium Records, James Lucid. On YouTube you can find it. And I'll be right back after this fantastic song.
Oh, she's untouchable, yeah, she's unstoppable. Tick, 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 hearts on split, split, split. Watch her move, boy, she's your meltdown hit. She walks in like a savior draped in radioactive silk. Promises the future, but her balance starts to tilt. Her heels strike the ground, they call it innovation, but every move she makes is pure detonation. Tick, tick, watch her light the fuse. Her lips are like ignition, sparks in every word she speaks. She dances through collapse while her empire springs a leak. She's got blueprints in her pocket, chords hidden in her clutch, and every man who follows her forgets she burns too much. Snap, snap, she's the queen of chaos. Tick, 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 watch her take control. She's a meltdown queen with a heart so cold. Snap, 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 you're under her spell. She's the meltdown queen and she does it so well. Let's break it down. She keeps a coded suitcase, her secrets stitched in seams. Her nails are brushed with graphite, her plans are laced with schemes. They call her the solution, but her lies are all on tape. And when the fallout settles, there's no chance to escape. Now you're caught in her trap. Shaman Marianne. Oh, she's flawless, she's insane. Your dream girl, your nightmare, your chain reaction flame. She's untouchable, unshakable, impossible to tame. But when she melts down, boy, you'll forget her name. Tick, tick, she's the game you'll lose. Tick, 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 she's a chain reaction. Every step she takes leaves destruction. Snap, 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 her game is supreme. Meltdown queen, she's the star of your dream. You don't even know. She has a perfect weapon, her brilliance blinding clear. Her plans are sealed in circuits and she smiles to engineer. Every corporation crowns her of the prize, while the ocean full and cities vaporize. Tick, tick, she's the queen of disguise. Tick, 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 she's untouchable, unstoppable. She'll steal your soul, leave you unlovable. Snap, 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 what's left to say? Meltdown queen and she'll blow you away.
My check. There we go. We're up and running. Meltdown Queen. One of these days that song is going to go viral. I can guarantee it. And forever after. Jeez. Gee whiz. Global Initiative for Information Integrity and Climate Change. What's the next one, I wonder? Global Initiative for Information Integrity and Cow Farts. You know it's coming. You know it's coming, right? Global Initiative for Information Integrity and Chemtrails. Vaccines. Every agenda they got, now they're going to come out with one of these integrity information. It's absurd. Why not just come out and debunk everybody? That's what everybody else does. So you're wrong, sir, because. Last night's video got 82 views. We had 153 visitors. At 1 hour, I had 124 views. 10 hours, when I got up this morning. Yeah, I slept in, I know. I went to bed right after the show last night. We'd done the show early. I was just burnt out. 194 views at 10 hours. I guess 6 hours later, I had what was it? 94, yeah. So I had 3 more views over the next 6 hours. And then tonight, you can see the second one up there. That's the show we're watching now, Global Initiative. That's the one that's posted. It was 206 views, so I had 12 views in 10 hours on a show I've been doing 5 days a week. It's called Silencing Any Descending Voices. You like this story? Coming up. The UN said the fire was extinguished in 6 minutes. You got this picture below it. That's the tent above it. The whole site is a tent, is it? They're so weird. All you're getting shots is the front gate for the most part, right? But now we got some high altitude pictures, but it doesn't tell you it's a tent. Does anybody really think that went out in 6 minutes? Is there anybody that gullible around here? This was in the blue zone. And we got lots of pictures of that. It took a while to get some decent stuff. Man, my goodness. Not again. COP30 Youth Go Bananas for nuclear, which is simply not true, by the way. And then they show you a girl with bananas, a pro-nuclear weirdo with bananas. And here's the leader of the pack. Oh my God. I shouldn't say anything. She was born with enough problems, right? It's not like a banana. Stop saying that, you crazies. Got a good show for you. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to those 2 stories right after we get through this madness. So a banana is 71 10 millionths of a curry per gram. You can fill up a stadium right to the roof, and then you can go in there and build a little tent, a little campfire, and you can live there for the rest of your life. Radiation from a banana can't hurt you. It's interesting because we haven't had a single story come out, and how many shows have we done on this? Let me have a look at that. I'm afraid to look. UN, so right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Tonight is 10, tomorrow's 11. That's not bad. It's not bad. Pretty darn good for an old fella like me. It's appropriate. We got Alien Hand tonight. I just, March 2011, 2012, 2013, I came out and bashed everybody I could find, which was an absurd amount of them, who said the word banana, who conflated Fukushima's 36 military reactor cores and 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings with bananas. Like everybody was saying it. And in the last number of years, say the last decade, how many times have we heard people say bananas? Not very often, is it? We cover a lot of stuff, holy shit. in that time. It's absurd. There's nobody covers more than we do. Naturally occurring radionuclides in food, potassium-40, it's harmless and innocuous. It's benign. We're already acclimated to it through genetics pure selection. So why would you put that in the equation? Unless the nuclear industry. They don't have an argument. Their argument is not to tell you the truth ever, because you'll start putting two to two together, right? Because you're not stupid like you think you are. All right. Little busted up today. Doing good, though. So bananas are 71 10 millionths of a curry. A curry is 37 billion anthropogenic man-made atoms, not natural atoms, but man-made atoms. And there's 88 curries in a gram of cesium. So for every potassium, you need 70. It's just absurd. Like, you can't even do it in that context, because there's potassium. Everything has potassium in it, right? We're already acclimated to it. It has no adverse side effects whatsoever. We're going to get to that story. Yeah, that's right. We're not at that story yet. We're not even at this story yet. That's the first one coming up after we get through this madness. A little further down the rabbit hole for everybody tonight. Interview with the father of global warming. So there's four things that United Nations is using to justify the Conference of Parties, for instance. And then all the attributes about climate change is real, and I'll explain that to you coming up. I have evidence, they don't. So at least hear me out, because I've been at this a long time. And I'm 100% honest, as you'll see. An interview with the father, this Wallace Brocker. So, we're global warming. So you have global warming, net zero, carbon footprint, and climate change. That's the four papers. None of them were peer-reviewed, and these are the authors I'm going to show to you. So tonight I'm going to do it a little bit different, though. I'm going to bring you some more supporting documentation. Fukushima actually contaminated the biggest body of water on the planet. Radio leaks, so something that contaminates the biggest body of water on the planet shouldn't be equated with the word leak. If it is, God help us if we have a flood. It's absurd, though, that Fukushima Daiichi contaminated the biggest body of water on the entire planet, the only planet, and the leak, see, it doesn't work. But they do that every story. You'll see that connotation of leak. And if you go back 50 years, you'll see it every time, too. And then cesium, of course, the biggest byproduct is not cesium, it's curium. The whole Pacific Ocean likely to have cesium levels 5 to 10 times higher than the peak of the nuclear bomb testing. The whole Pacific Ocean, like, this is not relegated to an area. Just bear with me. There's too many important facets to these stories. Might as well set myself up here so I can. So I got a big show to do tonight, and then we run into these little, we need more information moments, right? Well, there's two facets to the story. So a French Research Institute published a model based on TEPCO's numbers up to 2013. This is what the Pacific Ocean looked like. So is that a leak? Now, there's another thing to remember about the emissions, the event into the Pacific Ocean. I got to learn to include this all the time, because it's always in my head, but I don't really talk about it too much. Well, I do, but you know what I mean? Here we go. I'll try this one more time. Because it's important. So what happens with radiation in an accident? An accident is different. So that's what it looks like in 2012. This is what it looks like today. But you won't see this particular picture anywhere because I found a high-quality picture, was able to zoom in. And I can assure you I'm the only person out there, unfortunately, horrifyingly, on the entire planet that is showing you this particular close-up version of Fukushima reactors after they got the fuel out of the pool. So if they got the fuel out of the pool, then why does it look so... Why did you leave all that material there? Were you sloppy? Were you just lazy? Or did you actually fake it and pretend you were on top of a building that doesn't exist? Now, solution, they say, for climate change is nuclear, but nuclear is climate change. The ocean, every inch, there's an anthropogenic man-made atom pulsing energy at the speed of light. But the problem was the radioactive fallout. This was a Neptunium-239 radioactive fallout based on 20 days. So in 25 days, Neptunium would have 10 decays. So 2.5 days, there's a decay. And for the anthropogenic man-made atoms, the consensus is there's 10 half-lives. And in the case of Neptunium-239, it decays to... Its next decay, rather, is to plutonium. It has 10 different decays, but the plutonium is 24,000-year half-lives. So it takes 240,000 years to decay to its next nightmare. But there's more to it in that equation. So when you look at these buildings, at the top of the buildings were 8 reactor cores and 2 fuel pools. And these people are pretending that they're above one of the fuel pools. So at the very top of the building. 190-foot, 19-story, 65-meter buildings. Now, the problem is you had 9 reactor cores or more. We know that they're producing, each reactor produces about 5 3/4 of a reactor cores. Each reactor core can power 1 million homes. When you put it in the pool, it's still splitting atoms. So it boils off a lot of water, has to replace special water, it has to be replaced, borated water has to be replaced every day. That goes up to tall, skinny stacks, about 120,000 liters. Now, when you have a nuclear accident, something happens. You break, instead of the fuel splitting atoms, you broke it up into fuel particles. And each particle is splitting atoms forever and ever, for 240,000 years or more. So as you split this up and it goes everywhere, you have radioactive fallout from each atom or each particle. Because the fuel is not supposed to be in that environment, it's supposed to be in a containment. It's not supposed to be, and there's no containment. And the reactor is not really a containment because the tourists can burp it out during accidents in order to avoid accidents. They release huge amounts of radiation through that facet. So the problem is, the reason the plume got so big so fast is because the plume is just replicating itself every second. It's splitting the particulates from the fuel that is in the plume itself and amongst everything else, right? The sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs are able to ingest any kind of isotope and turn it into a biological weapon, a weapon of mass destruction on its own. You can't destroy it in incinerators. Excuse me. For instance, you just liberate it back into the environment, or forest fires, you just liberate it back into the environment. And we've been producing it nonstop. But these accidents and the dumping in the ocean, the Manhattan Project era, Manhattan Project, they dumped 1.4 million 300,000 gallon tanks, roughly, into 41 miles of unlined trenches. So right now they got 177 300,000 gallon tanks. They spent tens of billions of dollars trying to figure out what to do with. 177. They actually dumped 1.4 million into the soil, unlined trenches right alongside the Columbia River, in a part of the country that gets brutal snowstorms, has droughts, has dry droughts for a month or two where, everything is dustified. It's right alongside the Columbia River, which feeds tens of thousands of farms downstream and eventually ends up into the Pacific Ocean. But the plume covered the planet. Let me talk about that for 1 second. So carbon doesn't have that attribute. And I'll explain carbon to you too, coming up after this part. So, because the reactors, this is why they're pretending that it's still there, right? Because the fuel partake, each building, say 30 years old at that time, had, let me show you another depiction of the fuel pool so you got a little tiny bit better insight. So the fuel, right, and I talk about this a lot, but I don't really think I'm doing it justice by doing that. So 1, 2, 3. So reactor 3 is a good one. Let's just do that. Crap, I got everything under the sun. So, what I mean by that, I got like 400 pictures there I'm looking at. I wanted this picture because you can see the stump of reactor 3. This was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. You see there's a fuel pool up in the corner, an identical one up in this corner, and this is the reactor core. In order to take fuel out of the reactor core and put it in the pool, it's the top of it is at the top of in the fuel pool area. And it's separated by this inflatable barrier. Yeah, you heard me, inflatable barrier. And then, the reactor has a lid on it, right? But they take it out underwater, put it into one of the pools. Now, normally one of the pools is just for cool down period. And you can't possibly conceive how many atoms are released during that period. So imagine taking a running reactor core, you shut it down, you take it out, you put it into a pool, and this has a chimney attached to it. It's splitting atoms for 1 million homes and businesses. So try wrapping your mind around that statement, though. And so imagine in 1 minute how many atoms it has to produce to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses. That's some serious energy, right? It's incredible energy. And it's totally controlled. Everything is, it hasn't run away or anything like that. Now, this material, the fuel itself is splitting atoms. It's a perpetual machine. The appropriate name is a perpetual misery machine. Perpetual disease factories is the best way to describe a nuclear fuel pool because the atoms are released directly into the environment, which are all, except for a few, surrounded by farmers as far as you can see from a plane or a satellite. I'm not kidding you. And it's usually located in a very important water source for that part of the country. And, like the Great Lakes, for instance, the third biggest aquifer on the entire planet, has absurd amount of nuclear on its shoreline. Rico, one of the Fermi plants had melted down one of their sodium breeder reactors. All right, let's keep going. Blah. I hate this part. I don't hate it, but this is the way I put these difficult shows together anyway because you gotta challenge your lie with documentation and then move on to the next line. You got to keep going and see how many you can get through because you can't get through it all. Right? It's pretty rare for me to get everything I put together for a show that day in the 24-hour news cycle. We're going to get to the conference of parties here is quite a bit. Is going to be quite a bit of it, rather, I should say. An interview with the father of global warming, Wallace Brocker. So Fukushima contaminated the biggest body of water on the planet, but the radioactive leaks, does that look like a leak to you? Because at the top of the buildings are 8 more reactor cores. So that's non-reactor cores. There's 4 of these buildings. They put a cover over it and claimed that it was wonderful inside of it. Okay. I just want to break down the 4. You had global warming, you had net zero, you had carbon footprint, and you had climate change. That's the 4 weapons that are weaponized against humanity and the 8 million species by a military-industrial complex known as UN. The physicist behind net zero, Professor Miles Allen, got a nice cushy job now at Cambridge, and the United Nations got his paper, and it's weaponized against you. So net zero. First off, the 15 of the biggest container ships produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. There's 90,000 of those ships on the ocean, by the way. But it's because of what they're burning and what they've been allowed to burn. So the people behind it, the organizations that support it, like the international marine organizations, these are terrible organizations. When your Geiger counter is screaming this far away from a ship on the ocean, that's the definition of hell right there. And for the people in the boat who clearly don't know what they're doing or would never be on that boat, the British, in particular, spent over 30 years doing this and this. They're not the only ones, but the British seem to be the most prolific. 30 years they had these cargo boats converted, dropping barrels. Now, the barrels are crimped on the top and the bottom. So every 33 feet is an atmosphere, 14.6 pounds per square inch. Once it gets down to, say, 3 atmospheres, 100 feet, less than 100 feet, the barrel's going to crush for sure. I was a commercial diver, 14,000 hours. I've seen quite a lot of barrels. I've never seen one that wasn't rusted completely through. These barrels, this is what they're doing all day for 30 years, just driving around, dropping it off to ships. And they don't care who's there. It's got to get off the ship. You got to drop it. And the contempt that the crew has, because they wouldn't be on that boat if they understood what they were doing to their bodies, right? The captain wouldn't be driving the ship. He wouldn't take that job if he understood what was happening because of these barrels. And they get down they're down there on the continental shelf, the nursery of the Atlantic Ocean, right? Sellafield was used to be called Windscale. It changed the name because of Reactor 4 there melted down in 1957, a plutonium mixed oxide breeder reactor for the weapon industry. It's still hemorrhaging 8 million liters a day into the Atlantic Ocean. And then the Sellafield, of course, if you go look up satellite pictures of it, is surrounded by farms as far as you can see. There's something going on here we're not aware of, but this is a significantly evil agenda. This is not a nuclear scientist, I know, because he's wearing a paper suit. Well, first off, because if he's on the site, he doesn't know anything about nuclear. If you know anything about nuclear, you'll never drag anybody to that site. So they would have died that evening or that night or the next morning at the latest. Their organs would have melted. What they're spraying, and look how he's leaning ahead. Their boat, like, set her on a line. They died that day. There's a lot of these people. These are the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society. The immigrants don't speak the language. And so what probably happened was they had a homeless person they sent over there. They said they were going to give him $2,000 to go over there and get some pictures. And he either never came back or he came back and died shortly after. So now they're going to spray that whole area because of the fuel particles are there splitting atoms. And this is designed to coat that and stop the atoms at least from floating around a little bit less than what's going on. And when the homeless stop dropping dead, then they can send in some equipment and try to clean it up. And it's the same thing for this person. They would have died that day. It's absurd that somebody stood up anywhere in there with a paper suit on. So this is mining for uranium. How carbon-free? How carbon-free is that? How carbon-free is this? How carbon-free was decades of that? How carbon-free is decades of that? Because you destroy the ecosystem, the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestration chain. How carbon-free is it to, close communities, run away and leave the supermarkets and all the food there, leave the schools there, leave the banks there, leave the jewelry shops there. There was one hospital there in Fukushima had $1 billion worth of equipment stolen out of it in the nuclear wasteland. So that's radiating patients, who knows where. How carbon-free is everybody abandoning their homes and their pets and their graveyards, their hopes and their dreams and their legacy and their, community after community after community that should have been abandoned and didn't. How carbon-free is the heartbreak behind all that? How carbon-free was the nuclear war? They call it nuclear testing. It's the same radiation and the same radioactive fallout. Just because it's not done in anger doesn't mean there wasn't a cause and effect from it.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
I do every day. Hanford, like I say, they had what they dumped just into 41 miles of unlined trenches I was talking about earlier for the Manhattan Project. That was dehydrated. That was sludge, and that was splitting atoms. It was enough to make an aquarium of nuclear waste, the splitting atoms, 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, and wrapped around the entire planet more than once. That's just, who knows what they done up in Mayak, the Soviet Union. Who knows what China's done? Who really knows what the whack lunatic Britain done? Besides, we blew up all the tropical paradises on the planet, for goodness sakes. Immediately. Oh, yeah, it's a tropical paradise. Let's blow it up. Let's not just blow it up. Let's use stuff like Castle Bravo in it. Castle Bravo, by the way, was equal to over 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at one time. And it was 5,000 square miles was lethal doses for radioactive fallout. I'm assuming that was the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, but just give me a second, see if I can get lucky here. What they done at Hanford, because they were all breeder reactors on top of that, right alongside the Columbia River. There was at one point in the Columbian River, just right close to this spot, you can see what they're throwing in the ground, barrels. You know how they're going to rust in the ground with electrolysis? Holy crap. Hang on. Da-da-da-da-da. Do-do-do-do-do. Just try it over on this hard drive right quick. I don't know. Let's keep rolling here. So how carbon-free was that? How carbon-free was abandoning all the supermarkets and all the animals and all the... How carbon-free is nuclear? How net zero is nuclear that you can't drink the water from these wells because of the nuclear industry? How carbon-free or net zero is dumping all that nuclear waste, not only there, but in the oceans and off ships. Like, the whole process of nuclear is crazy. Just to get it, you say, oh, well, 1 gram is equal to whatever, right? A ton of coal or something, right? But you got to burn 10 tons of coal to get that 1 gram. You build it right alongside of farmland prime. This is a picture from Fukushima. You abandon all these communities, all that equipment, all that, all the pavement and road and cement, and all the buildings are radioactive for millions of years. All the leaves now, all the trees are radioactive pollen. All the plants are producing radioactive pollen. You got to put that into the equation of stupid nuclear. The A-10 Warthog, they only shoot dirty bombs, right? This was 2019. The United States studied the question of getting rid of 36 million depleted uranium munitions, DOLRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. 700 tons by a Japanese physicist of DU was calculated to be equal to 44,000 Nagasaki bombs. These are dirty. Each one of these are dirty bombs. Typically, McAllister's Oklahoma's facility. All of these dots were, and there's 50,000 of these at one time, were nuclear. Not 50,000 of these, I shouldn't say, but there was 50,000 nuclear weapons in spots like this in the United States at one point. These are typically in farmland. They can't contain the tritium, by the way, in the weapons, so that's released into the environment. And each of these little communities and little farmlands were being used as human shields. What was the carbon footprint of all of that, I wonder? What was the carbon footprint of this perpetual dumping from all the nuclear countries worldwide? What's the carbon footprint for all the uranium ever produced? It's still after splitting atoms now. Right, all these dots were human shields for nuclear weapons. So let's go to carbon footprint. We just kind of covered that a little bit. This was a public relation campaign cooked up by BP Oil. Right, they had a oil spill up in Alaska, and they wanted to blame you for it. So they had this huge campaign. So that was jacked by BP Oil. That was jacked by UN. So UN used 4 papers. They used Wallace Brocker's global warming. They used Miles Allen's net zero paper. They used BP Oil, carbon footprint. So what is your carbon footprint? Right? And so when you ask Congress people and senators, they'll say, well, that's what we're working on. We're the experts. But when you challenge the experts...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What % of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What % of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess, it's okay.
I'll bite 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm going to
Okay.
get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not 0.5%. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
So we're just fractions away from plant life dying off. The less carbon, the more likely you are to... Well, the less carbon you got, the more you're going to look like the moon. So it's an incredible difference from they're in charge of it. So, James Edward Hansen, also known as Degenerate James Hansen, He's an interesting one. He's best known for his research. Well, he's best known for his congressional testimony on climate change. So we had Wallace Brocker, global warming, Miles Allen, net zero, climate change, BP oil rather for carbon footprint, and James Edward Hansen for climate change. A 15-minute speech, and that was the turning point in the history of global climate change. Marked the official beginning of the global warming policy debate, and that testimony was pivotal moment in the history of global climate. Brought it in. That's where the conversation started. Now, James Hansen, excuse me, I could have turned the volume down. He went down to Taiwan when they were going to vote on nuclear, bringing food into the nuclear food from the nuclear wasteland into Taiwan. He showed up to promote nuclear and something else. Can you remember? As Taiwan pro-democracy activist, this is Hong. He's a nuclear physicist, and he does these stunts in order to get attention. So there was a referendum going on. He wanted to put on the ballot a proposal for the referendum for people to vote on. Should Taiwan import food from the nuclear wasteland itself? Which is absurd, right? And James Hansen was there to support it and promote nuclear. Hang rather, it's with a H, right? I can't remember his first name off the top of my head. He's very well known, right? He's got nuclear Mythbusters or something in Taiwan. He's not even original. Here he was on a hunger strike, but he was not a hunger strike, believe you me. So, as Taiwan pro-democracy activists is rushed to the hospital, climate scientist James Hansen urges nuclear referendum. Coincidentally, Dr. Hansen landed in Taiwan that same day to receive the prestigious Tang Prize, which is known as the Asian Nobel Peace Prize, and each Peace Prize comes with $1.34 million. Cash award. Cash. He was retiring, eh? He's been promoting nuclear for so many years. Can't resist him. Agreed. So,
nuclear energy.
I'm going to play a video of James Hansen talking about radiation in order to finish. This is why he's the guy, remember, who's responsible for climate change. Here he is telling people radiation fallout is equal to flying on an airplane. The radioactive fallout, each atom, you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle. Each atom is considered equal, more poisonous. It's 2 billion times more poisonous than industrial poison.
Is harder for people to understand, the idea of radiation. I mean, radiation is natural. The Earth is bombarded by radiation all the time. So the radiation that was released, for example, in 3 Mile Island, that exposed the accident at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, exposed residents nearby to radiation, which is equivalent to the amount of radiation that you get by flying in a commercial aircraft across the continent and back. So it's not really that dangerous, but
he sure is. So 3 Mile Island, story from October 11, 1989. Testing of evaporator begins at 3 Mile Island. And what James Hansen told you was an unbelievable, despicable lie. Three Mile Island power plant workers prepared Wednesday began testing equipment used to boil off 2.3 million gallons of contaminated water contaminated in the nation's worst commercial. Right, commercial is really important because Santa Susana, for instance, meltdown, the sodium reactor, was equal to 460 of these 3 Mile Island reactor meltdown releases, according to the statistics they give out, which are clearly not true. They said the releases effect on the average person living within 50 miles of 3 Mile Island will be less than the amount of radiation received from a year of watching color television. A year of watching color television. They acknowledged 2 million people got irradiated, but it was equal to watching color television for less than a year. Radiation doesn't work that way. It's in your body, it's pulsing energy every second, almost at the speed of light, for the rest of your life, not for... It's destroying your chromosomes, your cells, your DNA, whether you're in front of a TV or not. And not that TVs back in those days were very healthy, trust me. It was infinitely worse. When it's in your body, it's trillions of times more devastating because it's wrecking your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells. Your body tries to repair that every second. White blood cells can't keep up with it and has to attack the source every second. So then why are they harvesting food in a nuclear wasteland where it's never going to stop falling out, surrounded by millions of one-ton bags of radioactive fallout? We know they're harvesting the food because they're not wearing their idiotic paper suits. So that was the preamble. Is there such a thing as a preamble? We kind of do that around here. So I seen there was a fire and I ignored it. I didn't care. When I started the news cycle this morning, right? I'll get to it, right? In other words, I'm going to get to it. So anyway, this is the first thing. When I started, at the end of the day, not the end of the day, I guess, but this afternoon, this is what I was looking at. And you couldn't really get any good stuff. You had to wait a few hours, and sure enough, it started to show up. So I don't know what's going on. I'm the same as you. Okay, so you can see the buildings there. Those buildings are actually temporary buildings. You can see the big air exchangers in the top picture. So I started to realize, I don't know if it wasn't, I don't think it was this picture. We'll go through these pictures. I can see the fire was pretty big. I wasn't sure what was burning yet. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. So I'm doing screen captures. See the wrinkles in the wall? Because they're actual big tents. They're not actual steel or plywood or something. They're temporary structures, I guess. Okay, and so you can imagine what a fire will do to that place. A good fire gets loose. Fire alert during UN Climate Change Conference of Parties 30. And I said, holy shit, it's a tent. That's the tent city that they got there. The United Nations assured the media it was put out in 6 minutes. Give or take a few seconds or hours. This is the blue zone where all the discussions are going on, where all the dignitaries are hanging out. Dignitaries. People you hired not to do this went down there and done that and made deals with people that we hired them to avoid. There's 2 guys there with fire extinguishers. They're not going to last very long with that kind of heat. They might do something, but on time it was down right there. And you can see another guy over there is, so that's the Rwanda pavilion, I guess. You can be sure the snob's not going to be set up close to that. You see the roof up there is torn apart from fire. How long does it take something like that to get out of hand, I wonder? I would say the building where all the wealthy people were was an actual structure. And they used, these are $500,000 pavilions. It's $500,000 to have a little tent there at the Conference of Parties 30, apparently. I watched some of the videos. There was some serious panic, eh? The guy with the purple was running around pushing people to get out. He's clearly UN security. UN got his everything. He got his own, which is basically its own country in a building, right? It has sovereignty. It's the same as an embassy. You can't arrest them on that site. And they already voted to give themselves immunity from prosecution, so they don't have to worry about too much. There's no incentive not to be evil, see? UN doesn't have an incentive not to be evil because they have immunity from prosecution. And so now they got a chain of people to keep people from running down to have a look, like they done at 3 Mile Island, I guess. That's a real fire. That's a real stupid thing to do, to have a tent city out in the Amazon jungle of all places during Tinder dry season. This could have went bad real quick, eh? I would have been brokenhearted. No, really, I would have been brokenhearted. That's crazy pictures, though, isn't it? Yeah, I've never seen that coming. The fire appeared to have started in one of the summit's country's pavilions. Again, that's Rwanda. There's no way the nuclear industry, we know the nuclear industry was there, even though they were silent for the media. They're cutting deals, right? It was climbing the walls and onto the ceiling. People were screaming. You know, they had 10,000 volunteers there. Most of them were lawyers and doctors. Every one of them was highly educated. They didn't want the average person to get there because and the people that they were interviewing were hiding their names, their badges, and they were saying how this is going to be helpful to their career in the future. It was climbing the walls onto the ceiling and people were screaming. Then I ran. I think I tripped and fell. You sure? If you don't know, who knows? I think I tripped and fell. What else could it be? Did you trip and fall or didn't you, doctor? People are traumatized and shocked. Yeah, but the fire got put out in 6 minutes, Dana. UN said so. It took them 6 minutes to put that puppy out. That's pretty impressive. The UN security guard telling us to leave. You can see huge columns of smoke rising up into the air through the hole that's been burned in the top of the conference center. Because it is the blue zone, right? Orange flames burned a hole through the sheeting that covered the venue. Sheeting. Why wouldn't you use something or some kind of fire retardant in that? Are you going to have a venue like that? I'm not complaining. It's okay. You don't have to. One eyewitness told the BBC he believed an electrical fire was the cause. One eyewitness. Does anybody really believe the BBC? Is there anybody that gullible left on the planet? The fire is likely to delay the closing of a deal in the talks. Oh, they got an excuse now, do they? Honey, we almost had a deal. Yeah, we'll be home tomorrow. We almost had a deal, but there was a fire, and I was so scared and traumatized. I peed in my $5 million or $5,000 suit. And I can't find my teddy bear that I snuggles up to every night when I go to bed. The fire is likely to delay the closing of a deal in the talks. What talks? There's no deal. They never. Again, this is why they got Constipated Party 30s, because they haven't got a deal in 30 years. Every year they have conference of parties, and it's a big cocktail party for 50 or 60,000 people, basically. The sellouts of all the 195 signatory countries. Nearly 200 countries are trying to agree on how to make progress in tackling climate change, right? Which is James Edward Hansen's paper, which was, none of those papers were peer-reviewed. All right, here comes the crazy. The crazy's never stopping. This is the madness of this show, though. If you try to cover the nuclear news cycle like we do, and you don't do this, but if you're insane, you're going to have a crazy day. Go out and try to cover as many lies as you could find in the news cycle in 24 hours on the nuclear industry, and you'll go bananas. Conference of Parties 30 Youth. I don't see the youth out there saying they're happy. They didn't interview anybody. Or they're just projecting it out there, see? And earth.org. Go bananas for if you care about Earth and your organization, why would you even look at nuclear, you weirdo? I mean, Jan Lee. Conference of Party 30 Youth goes bananas for nuclear. Among the chaos of national pavilions, crowded meeting rooms and protest. I'm going next year. I'll be there next year, wherever you two. I haven't looked up where you two. Hey, Siri. Where is United Nations Conference of Parties 31 going to happen in 2026?
The 31st United Nations Climate Change Conference, 31 Colombian pesos, is scheduled to take place in Antalya, Turkey in 2026. This decision follows a compromise between Australia and Turkey, with Australia withdrawing its bid to host and agreeing to preside over the conference instead.
Wow, ain't that interesting? I'd rather be going to, they won't let me in Australia, I don't think. I'm not sure I want to go to Turkey. I've got videos of Turkey. Maybe the year after. So here they are. A group of young people stood there for handing a banana to each passerby. So everybody was passing them, they were giving them a banana. Hi, we're from the nuclear industry. So what's the impression left with the people who, because you're not talking about the signatures from 195 countries, you're talking about the useful, right, the lapdogs of the industry that showed up. Seeking acceptance of nuclear power, let me get my big head out of the way for everybody, as part of the climate solution. Handing out bananas. That's her there, actually, is the same one to your lifter. It's the same person, I think. Let me see her neck. No, that might be different. Rafaela, blah, 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 an engineer representing Nuclear for Climate. Nuclear for Climate. Downplays concern about the perceived dangers of nuclear power. We have to lose the misconception we have. Well, you picked up 30 million one-ton bags in Japan after their reactors had a leak. So, not a big leak. It's only 30 million one-ton bags. So if you take a one-ton bag and put it in the back of a one-ton pickup truck, because that's all it can carry is 1 ton. Each of these bags are 1 ton, right? And so if you take one of these bags and put it in the back of a 1-ton pickup truck, and you go bumper to bumper with 1-ton pickup trucks, there's 6 rows of traffic around the planet from a leak. That's a leak. All I can say is thank goodness they never had an accident. We're something lucky. Six million rows of traffic around the planet is just considered a leak. Nothing got into the ocean, of course. Yeah, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but nothing got into the ocean. Yeah, they're right, buddy. Ocean. We know that. Nothing got in the ocean. Oh, okay. Eating 1 banana gives you the same exposure as living next to a nuclear power plant for an entire year. A whole year. You sure about that? A whole year, you say? These kids didn't live alongside of a nuclear plant for a whole year. They ran away when the nuclear plant broke down Their parents did, but the kids still came out deformed and Chernobyl. Well, they're abandoned. Her earrings would probably pay for open heart surgery for congenital heart disease for that child if she sold them. Nuclear industry is insane how the nuclear industry won't help the victims, eh? The Chernobyl victims, it's just horrifying what the nuclear industry could have changed every one of their lives for the better. It could have done it, They didn't have to say, hi, we're here from the nuclear industry, the disease factory that made you sick in the first place. Taking a commercial flight for 6 hours exposes you to more radioactivity than living next to a nuclear power plant for 1 billion trillion years. Okay, I made up the last part. For a year. But these kids, their parents ran away right away, but yet these kids have congenital heart diseases and congenital malformations. How do you explain that? This is climate for nuclear. Or even work inside of a nuclear power plant, so you get less radiation on an airplane than you would, or at a nuclear plant for a whole year than you would being on an airplane. These are radiation we're talking about from man-made stuff is not like a banana. It's not like living next to it. It's something that's in your body. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. Your body's attacking it with white blood cells till it builds a tumor around it. It's called radioactive fallout. And the fuel pools of every reactor site is hemorrhaging that into the environment 24 hours a day. And every year there's more fuel in the pools. So it's each year you're each year you're producing a stupid amount of more radioactivity each day from the site forever. Every year you're putting more in the pool. So every year you have a bigger releases plumes. There's 1,000 fuel pools. Each of them are producing a plume. So if you took say there's 1,000 fuel pools on the planet. Now just say they're all brand new, never been used. Nuclear industry has never been turned on. You got everything's ready. You have 400 and plus nuclear power plants. Each reactor got 2 fuel pools. You got all the universities. You got all the national laboratories. You still have never turned on a nuclear reactor. But you got everything ready to go. You're going to start the chain reaction. You're going to do it all around the world at the one time. So everything's going good. It's almost a year later, and you're getting ready for a fuel leach because you got to take fuel out and put some of it, about 1/3 of it, put it in the fuel pool and put some fresh stuff in the reactor core. You're going to bring in 1,000, 1,500 people to do that. Each reactor site spends at least $100 million a year on maintenance. Maintenance. Bear with me. Of maintenance. Oh, I forgot about that. Maintenance. So now all of a sudden, you're going to fire up all the nuclear plants worldwide at one time. So you fire them up, they're running for 1 year, you take the fuel out of the reactor core. So here's what happens to each fuel pool, its emissions after 30 days. This is when this model stops, consider it 30 days. So there's 1,000 fuel pools are going to do this in less than 30 days, and it's never going to stop until they find a repository for the fuel to stop it from releasing into the environment. So think of an invisible snowstorm where the snow never melts and never goes away and never stops snowing. And then you would be on the right track to appreciate what's happening 1,000 times a day. So now you got a plume covering the whole planet, and it never stops coming out. And it attacks everything with replicating cells for millions of years. So if you don't need a nuclear bomb, you don't need a nuclear war, you don't need a nuclear accident. All you really need is fuel pools to eventually exterminate the whole planet. So when she says it's harmless and innocuous and benign, I want you to consider Tokyo vice governor suggested a Fukushima draft because the power plant broke down. Everybody had to go there and get their nuclear dose. Official 311 notebook, because the power plant broke down, everybody 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima plant because your power plant broke down. So it's only right that you, instead of retiring, living the rest of your life, you should be prepared to die because the nuclear industry is more important than 8 million species and you're just one of them. Does that make sense? Or is it better just to be that person and say that is harmless and innocuous and benign, that is like a banana, that is like walking in the sunshine or sleeping next to somebody? Eating one banana gives you the same exposure as living next to a nuclear power plant. But it doesn't now, does it? This is what happens at a nuclear power plant. All nuclear power plants' fuel pools will produce a much bigger plume. This model is not based upon the inventories that were actually lost at all. This is the French government, by the way. This was a spike of 1 million, 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. These Chernobyl children have been abandoned by everybody, including particularly the nuclear industry. There's just thousands and thousands and thousands of these children that she makes the assertion, she won't go down there and tell the children it's in their head because that's what, she's a coward. She's there at conference of parties, passing out bananas and promoting nuclear as a solution when it's the actual cause of climate change for 80 years. 80 years of radioactive fallout, 80 years. You had all the nuclear testing, all the nuclear dumping, and it's never, none of it, everything is out there still pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. Gas, oil, and coal emissions, by the way, even if they were harmful or noxious or something, still don't make plumes that covers the entire planet. Carbon, of course, more puppies, more birds, more insects, more fruits, more plants, more trees, more pollen, more life. That's the cycle of life, right? Gets cycled into other species. Carbon gets cycled into trees and plants. And it's the cycle of life. Without carbon, you have less trees, less plants, less insects. But with nuclear, it covers it's the only anthropogenic man-made element that produces these plumes consistently. And that there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. Don't tell her. Well, it's true to say, even though the journalists, I've never seen this before. While it is true to say that a banana contains naturally occurring radioactive isotope, the dose is not cumulative. Now, where do you think they heard that to? That's my narrative through and through. Well, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing 5 shows a week. Brutal shows. Every one of them are brutal. It's brutal. You got to work all day to do it, put it together. How about the fact that they never stopped growing food in a nuclear wasteland, picked up 30 million one-ton bags, so 100% of wasteland, a nuclear wasteland as they get. And each prefecture is producing at least, not counting just rice, close to 1 billion, or Fukushima, which is one of the biggest prefectures in Japan, is over 1 billion pounds of rice a year. Obesity rates double in Japan in just the first year, which is a dead reckoning sign of radioactive brain damage. Critics of the so-called banana equivalent dose argue the concept is flawed, as consuming a banana doesn't increase one's exposure to radioactive potassium. That made me happy today. Every organism in the Fukushima prefecture is contaminated with radiation. Just the worm's excrement, feces, is 1.4 million atoms per kilogram, anthropogenic man-made atom. These are insane. Why would you eat anything from Japan, let alone Fukushima? You have to be nuts. Proponents of the nuclear energy have long used the banana example to illustrate that radiation is a natural part of our environment. You don't really hear it that much anymore because we cover news all the time, right? It's only the worst of the worst will actually stoop that low. Usually the young ones will do it when they're coming out of university or the year before they graduate or in that era. You put a camera in front of them, they'll regurgitate that every second. That's the only way they're going to get a cushy job, right? They have to show that they're evil. That's the best way to do it. Magnification of DDT concentrations. So this is the same, though, as anthropogenic man-made radiation going up the food chain, right? It bioaccumulates. What the hell is wrong with this creature? Nuclear power as a low-carbon emission alternative. I showed you earlier. It's absurd. I showed you the evidence. It's absurd. You know, like a nuclear power plant reactor needs 1 million gallons a minute of water. 1,440 minutes a day. That's 6,450,000 tons. That's a row of traffic right around the planet of 1-ton trucks, for instance, with 1,000 liters in the back of each one. That's how much a nuclear plant needs in 24 hours. So you got to get a row of traffic in through the reactor in less than 24 hours, and you got to boil water to power 1 million homes and businesses. And nuclear site can't run on its own power. So say you got 6 reactors on this site, and they all got to do that exact same thing. So 40 million 1-ton pickup trucks have to go through that site of water each day. 40 million liters. 40 million 1-ton pickup trucks. So 1 ton is 1,000 liters. So 40 million times 1,000. That's how much water each reactor needs. So each nuclear site need dedicated 24 hours a day just to build these incredibly energy-intensive projects. Like the one in the United Kingdom right now is one of the biggest projects on the entire planet in history. It's going to use enough cement to build a sidewalk to Rome. There's nothing. Once they're running, though, like just the uranium, in order to get their hands on the uranium, they're burning 10, 15 tons of coal, gas or gas or oil, to mill, a ton of rocks, tons of rocks down to a gram, and then the whole process to separate the chemicals, the chemical ponds that are evaporating into your environment. Look at this madness. Like if they're nuclear engineers, they know it's got nothing to do with a banana. Let's put it that way. I don't think I should have to articulate how insane and evil you got to be to do that. Like that's evil. That's the definition of insane. They're down there passing out bananas. Net zero needs nuclear. Somebody want to put that in the comments section? Net zero. Hashtag net zero needs nuclear. Hashtag. I'll do it. Net zero. Miles Allen. Net zero needs nuclear. Hashtag. With an S, that's right. Okay. Net zero. I'll just put it in the chat room for you. A few more people should do it because then that'll show up, maybe, because I'm censored pretty brutal. 13 people on my show, 15 likes. I got 23 votes. This is madness, though, isn't it? With bananas. At the Conference of Parties, the International Atomic Energy Agency is hosting Atoms for Climate Pavilion. Atoms for Climate. Hashtag. I'll do that one. So just copy and paste these hashtags. because that shows up in the search engine later on, weeks and months later. Yeah, pro-nuclear, pro-net zero. So they got 4 papers, and I showed you those 4 papers that they're using to bludgeon the 8 million species. And they're using nuclear as the reason you have climate change, because you have plumes covering the entire planet, pulsing energy at the speed of light for over 80 years. Our ecosystem not designed to accommodate stuff like that. The species, right, the thyroid glands of all the species are having epigenetic man-made isotopes turned into hormones, and the bones of every species is having their stem cells turned into anthropogenic man-made radioactive stem cells. So the only outcome of this is everything eventually disappears because they stop reproducing. Right? That's the ultimate outcome. If we never have a war, if we never have epidemics, if we never have nuclear accidents or nuclear dumping or nuclear waste or anything else, the fuel pools will eventually wipe out every species on the planet just through the emissions 24 hours a day through splitting atoms. The fuel pools are perpetual machines. This is why they're trying to come up with some kind of a repository, is because they're perpetual machines splitting atoms. Oh, they say it is dangerous for thousands of years, but why is it dangerous? Well, it's dangerous to everything because it can't contain the emissions from the fuel. It's pumped up to skinny, tall stacks on site, right? And it's just not talked about. But the reason, you won't hear it anywhere else. But the issue is, the fuel pools are splitting atoms, and there's no containment. And so eventually, you will kill every species on the planet from that fallout, because nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it, right? There, topics such as nuclear techniques to strengthen food security, sustainable water resources, and oceans health are being presented. At the Conference of Parties 30, the International Atomic Energy Agency is hosting Atoms for Climate Pavilion, $500,000. Japan's the third biggest donor to international degenerate atomic energy agencies. A hub for nuclear information, events, networking. A hub for nuclear information, events, and networking. A hub. Hell yeah, we'd be proud to set up a nuclear reactor in your country. We can make it happen. We would love to poison everybody in our country, and we'd like to buy all the stocks in your pharmaceutical companies too. Just, it's a hobby we have. Keep nuclear away from anything that sustains life, for goodness sakes, particularly water. They hate water with a passion. Water is your best friend, no matter who you are, no matter your race, your ideology, your religion, your background. We all have this. We all love water. Every one of us looked at a glass of water, empty glass of water, and said, that was so awesome. Every one of us. There's nobody on the planet that didn't do it. If you didn't, unfortunately, you might have something wrong with you. From the point of view of climate change, nuclear energy is zero carbon energy. From the point of view of climate change, nuclear is climate change. That it brings stability to the grid. You have outages all the time. Or you have to do a fuel change all the time. The best solution out there is, we never heard the word small modular reactors this year at all, not a single time. I don't think we did. Well, we've done this number 10 show, right? It's my 10th day of sauna, 10th day of red light therapy, 10th day of hardcore exercises. I was pretty busted up today. It was okay though. Once we're done the exercise, I jumped in the sauna for 30 minutes, got under the red light therapy. Started working on the show tonight, and we've been at it ever since. And so I do my shows 10 p.m. nighttime, my time. I usually finish at around midnight my time, so it's the very last thing I do each day. So nuclear energy is not zero carbon. Nuclear energy is the most carbon resource of intensive industry in human history. So, like, just the whole process to get uranium, right? Just to get it out of the ground. Just bear with me here. Just to get it out of the ground, it's the most resource for. They use chemicals to separate it on top of that. All the communities and cities like Cheroblinka and the Ukraine and Fukushima Prefecture, all the supermarkets and schools, all the animals, all the water is no longer drinkable because you won't contain it. Every nuclear plant has incinerators and pumps it directly into the ocean. They've been dumping it directly into the ocean for 30 to 40 years nonstop. And then you finally had pains of conscience because you noticed a massive decline in all the species. He said, well, it's okay to pump it directly from the nuclear plants, but no more dumping it off the sides of ships if you can avoid it. That didn't stop Italy from going down to the Somalian coast and scuttling nuclear waste, ships full of nuclear waste on their coastline, which killed their industry. And so the only industry got there now is piracy. The whole process, like, you got to get tons of coal and soil. You got to crush that up. You got to process everything. It needs energy, absurd energy for all that. It's got to through a chemical process to separate it, then to turn it into fuel fabrications. Like it's an absurd amount of processes. Every nuclear, like the dumping that went on in between all of this, just to get to that stage, the carbon, like calling it carbon free when it's kills everything with carbon. The weapon industry, that doesn't get included for some reason. I mean, how do you dispose of 36 million depleted uranium munitions? These are not depleted, they're gone through a chain reaction, right? All the dumping, all the processing, the whole story is absurd. Eating one banana gives you the same exposure as living next to a nuclear power plant for an entire year. See, they should lose their degree for saying that, but they're encouraged to say it, right? When they're getting to their degree, that's a big joke. Like when they have lectures and presentations, it's the audience is generally seated, full of the pro-nuclear community. Let me show you an example. I got quite a few examples, by the way. This was a guy who successfully covered up a huge radioactive fallout in Canada. He's not from Canada, but he works at Simon Fraser University. The audience, which is supposed to be there to learn about what happened to Fukushima recently when it happened, are supposed to be just concerned citizens from the community, right? But what was interesting is they all laughed on cue. And unless you understand nuclear, you don't know what the joke was. Let me check the volume. Let's hope that's right. I'll get it.
And living next to a nuclear power station can actually contribute less than your.
Let me do that one again. Living next to
a nuclear power station can actually contribute less than your loved one when it comes to. With myself as one of the.
I'll come back to that. So how did they know to laugh? How did they know that was a joke? Unless you know a lot about nuclear, you'll never know that was a joke. I'm supposed to reassure you, living next to a nuclear plant, you get less radiation than you do sleeping next to your partner in bed. So he's including sunshine and... So she says the same thing, right? Living next to a nuclear plant for a year, you get more radiation from a banana. He's talking about Fukushima.
And living next to a nuclear power station can actually contribute less than your loved one when it comes to. With myself as one of the principal investigators, was awarded $6 million.
So he was declaring his no conflict of interest. But the nuclear industry, he just got $6 million. And he covered up the 20 million particles of iodine-131 per liter, and said it was equal to 10 pulses of energy a minute, I think he said. It can't be iodine-131 unless it pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second for all of its decays, right? It's got 10 different decays. So even though sometimes it might not be, iodine-131, of course, is a huge dose right away, and the damage is forever. It's like cars, she said, before. That's her there, right? It's like cars. Before we didn't use seatbelts, we liked drinking and driving. This got nothing to do with cars. If you breathe it in, it's in your body. Your body attacks the damage it's producing each second. So that's a cause and effect, right? So it pulses energy in every direction, almost at the speed of light. And that wrecks chromosomes and DNA, cells, molecules, permanent lesions to your organs. Your body's trying to repair that each second. It can't keep up with it. And it has to attack the source every second, eventually build a tumor on it. Because anthropogenic man-made radiation is a foreign object in your body. And it's pulsing energy at the speed of light. See, the white blood cells, each white blood cell displaces a red blood cell. The red blood cell carries oxygen and nutrition. And so her to equate it with a car, these are things we don't do anymore nowadays, she says, like not using a seatbelt. The nuclear industry is the same thing. It has evolved. First off, you can't control the embrittlement of these reactors. So to even try to conflate it with car accidents or drinking and driving is absurd. We have security to make sure it's safe, mostly for the environment. Clearly, they don't give a shit about the environment, okay? It's clear as daylight. They never stop growing food in nuclear wasteland and trying to poison you in your supermarkets and your restaurants and your fast food. This industry is insidious. It has no right to exist. If they don't go, you'll go. If you don't go, all 8 million species go. They need to go because they will exterminate you, and they know what they're doing. The organization she represents, Nuclear for Climate, brings together nuclear professionals and scientists from 150 societies and associations. So they all throw $1,000 at her. She got $150,000 to take her friends, go down there and pass out bananas. They'll do that in the drop of a hat. They love that idea. That's perfect. She's the perfect little teacher's pet, right there. That's it, right there. Nuclear energy among the carbon-free solutions to climate change. I just showed you why that wasn't true. At least Jan Lee did say, you can't compare bananas. Well, that didn't stop him from comparing seatbelts, for goodness sakes, right? But at least she done that. We've never seen that before, so it's a step in some direction. So a Becquerel is an atomic disintegration per second. Not minute, but per second. A Curie has 37 billion disintegrations. See, a disintegration is the wrong way to frame it. They do that because it downplays it, it disintegrates. Oh, well, it's gone. To the average person, when they hear the word disintegration, it's gone. Oh, well, it's gone. That's great. Give me a banana. These are explosions, almost at the speed of light. So if you got gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas exploding at the speed of light, because that's what they do, all of them are almost at the speed of light. And somehow or another, they learned that one of them's a bit slower than the other one. But they're all almost the speed of light, so it doesn't matter. But it does matter if they're trying to fool you. Because I've seen stories where they say, well, this was that type of isotope, and that type of emitter doesn't pulse as fast as the other ones. Dodged the bullet. No, you didn't. We don't have anything in nature that pulses energy at the speed of light. That's a weapon, okay? When it's in your body, or birds or mammals or animals or fish or whales or elephants, it doesn't matter, or giraffes, their body has to attack it with white blood cells for the rest of their lives and try to build a tumor around it. A sarcophagus, which is a tumor. That's the body's reaction to a foreign object that's not from the solar system, that's not created by the sun, it's not stardust, it's not the material we're made of, the stardust, right? The sun doesn't create these. We call them anthropogenic man-made because they're man-made. So when you compare a banana, which is, it shows you the contempt that conference of parties actually have, that they were letting people do that. Knowing, and there's lots of experts there, knowing that that simply wasn't true. That's contempt. That's in-your-face contempt to be passing out bananas and conflating it with nuclear. Potassium-40 compared to anthropogenic man-made, a gram would be 71 10 millionths of a curry. 71 10 millionths, 0.000071 curries per gram. Man-made is 88, cesium was 88 curries per gram. At each curry is 37 billion anthropogenic man-made atoms. Strontium-90, and this is important, for every cesium-137 produced, there's 100 times more strontium-90. And it's got 140 curries, 140 times 37 billion per gram. Each of the reactors had at least non-reactor cores in the buildings. Each building was at least, because of the assemblies, we're assuming, 3 decades, they were stuffed. And that's appropriate, because that's what you're seeing worldwide with that particular design, right? So 104 curries can contaminate 1,090 square miles. 100 curries, that's less than a gram of strontium. There's enough radioactive fallout. Chernobyl had a 3,840 square mile, but so-called strict radiation dose control zone, but it wasn't controlled that much. And then the bioaccumulations, like suggesting that there's a biological half-life of anthropogenic man-made isotopes, I don't think is reasonable, because your body, it's electrically charged, your body, it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. So if it's in your bones, you're not going to pass it out through your kidneys. That's a good study. You should read that one. Radioactive cesium in the heart. You just, look up a documentary on YouTube called Chernobyl Hearts. It's about a United Kingdom foundation that goes in to the orphanages full of debilitated congenital malformation from Fukushima, and they've done thousands of paid for thousands of open heart surgeries for the victims to give them some kind of relief. Universities launch a new nuclear law course with the International Atomic Degeneracy Agency support. So he's, we sit him down in China, pick up a $19 million check. 19 million, 19.6 million, whatever it was. So how hard is it for, you got 195 countries throwing money at them. So how easy is it him to buy a university's president or the curriculum committees to get this put into action, right? So when you got a $500 million or $1 billion a year to work with, you can get this stuff into the universities. The industry is rotten. Rafael Grossi is an example of how rotten the nuclear industry people actually are. Like not terrible example, but he's a prime example of how terrible people are in that industry. He shouldn't be allowed within 2 square miles of a university. This guy's a predator. He's going around exterminating the planet by promoting nuclear. the Alexandria University in Egypt, Institute of Nuclear Energy in Brazil, the United Arab Emirates universities in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where they just had 26 killer whales wash up dead, emaciated from the radioactive fallout breaking the food chain. University of West Indies in Jamaica, which don't even exist anymore. And the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa, offered postgraduate courses in nuclear law. Because in order to get nuclear into a country, they need a bunch of infrastructures. Courses in nuclear law. There should be courses in nuclear facts like we show here. This became possible through the International Atomic Energy Agency's University Partnership Program with 195 countries. Right, so they've taken over your planet, and they're not good people at all. They don't have a single redeeming quality, matter of fact is. A pilot initiative launched by the Director General, Rafaela Mondadori, in 2022. And he signed partnership arrangement with 6 universities at the International Atomic Energy Agency's first international conference on nuclear law, the global debate. We covered it. When he signed partnership arrangements with the 6 universities, this opens a new chapter for teaching of nuclear law, said International Atomic Energy Agency, Grossi. EA, they infiltrated all of our universities, all of our schools. This is just another facet of it. They've already done that, right? So is ERPA, so is UNSCLEAR, so is the IPRC. The United Nations is, UNESCO is there taking over all the regulatory curriculums in all kinds of impoverished countries that are part of the signature. It's a takeover, and now they're wiping us out. Now they're going to have an incredible control grid. You're going to have robots. I mean, there's talk now of letting prisoners out of prison and assigning them a robot parole officer that's going to be with them 24 hours a day to rearrest him and bring him back to jail if he breaks any laws, and to note those laws and to make sure he doesn't harm somebody. Right? The digital ID, of course, is rolled out everywhere. They're panicking because the whales will be gone in a year or two, right? And then people are going to wake up and they're going to want revenge. And they're into promoting nuclear. They want to be protected. A lot of the people that are the architects of the misery, their children are in positions of authority. I congratulate our partner institutions on successfully launching their courses and commend their commitment. That's why he's not at conference or parties this year, I guess. Their commitment to providing a comprehensive, academically rigorous program that is widely accessible to students and professionals. Education is the key to extermination of everybody through the nuclear technology. Secure and peaceful use of the most dangerous element released constantly into the environment, nuclear fallout. You know, what's interesting about the nuclear industry is, like, my system gets its act together. 30 million one-ton bags, IAEA was there promoting that to be reused. What Anna Clark put it very eloquently when she said the International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator. She is from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so they're not in a position to judge or approve anything, water, soil, nuclear dumps, nuclear plants, or anything else. They're not a regulatory agency. They're a subsidy of UN. Don't tell that to Rafaela Grossi, though. He's going around telling everybody he's the watchdog. And look, nuclear law education. How can you have a nuclear law education when you're not even a regulatory agency? How the hell would that happen in a normal society? Japan gets the UN nuclear watchdog approval. This is Reuters, which is regurgitated by at least 1,500 medias with spider bots automatically right onto their websites. Adding that Japan would have the final say on the releases. In other words, the International Atomic Energy Agency Yeah, they approved it, but Japan got the final say, so they're not a regulatory agency. That's what they're saying, right? United Nations gives Japan a stamp of approval. He picked up that day, a $19 million check. A donation from the third biggest donor on the planet, Japan, to the International Atomic Energy Agency. The stamp of approval for Fukushima water release. Right? IAEA assures safety of water releases from Fukushima. Grossi emphasized that the International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulatory agency. This document is not a recommendation or an endorsement, and the Japan government has the final say. They're not regulatory, but they're acting that part. They're creating laws, their universities are taking their curriculum, schools are taking their curriculum worldwide and implementing it. And it's a MK Ultra on a scale that most people can't conceive or believe. The top of each of these reactor buildings could have had 4 decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings. Has Fukushima nuclear meltdowns created more radioactive fallout than all meltdowns in history combined? Well, I provided the evidence of that earlier, by the way. This is Frank von Hippel. Frank is a sitting professor. He's talking about the inventories on March the 16th, day 5 at Fukushima.
And if, in terms of what we know about the capacity, about how many fuel rods would likely be inside that reactor, what sort of quantity are we talking about radioactivity?
I've heard different numbers ranging from 2 to 15 reactor cores worth. No, 2 to about 8 reactor cores worth.
So if it can't be controlled, that's worst case scenario, 8 reactors worth of radioactivity.
Right. Right.
And it would be released into the atmosphere.
By the way, the fact that this has happened at unit number 4 is understandable and is consistent with the theory that it really did dry out because the fuel from the unit number 4 was most recently discharged, and therefore was the hottest, and therefore the water would have boiled off more rapidly.
See how she said that? They both said hottest at the same time. That was rehearsed, right? So let's just look at reactor 4 during that period. What did it actually look like? So reactor 4 is up there in the corner, up there. So there wasn't a nuclear expert on the planet that looked at that, said the fuel pools were there, or the reactor core. Well, in reactor 4, the reactor core was in the fuel pool, some of it. They were doing a fuel cycle on it. So fuel cycle, you don't take the reactor core out and put it all in the fuel pool. You're taking it 1/3, you're putting it in the fuel pool, and you're putting fresh fuel down inside it. Now you but you will be moving fuel assembly somewhere else in the pool, because you don't want just one section of fresh fuel and 2 sections of older fuel, right? You want to mix it together. They hire 1,000 to 1,500 outsiders because they're getting huge doses. You're taking the containment apart, right? So the radiation is hemorrhaging out of there forever. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging anyway. You're up in that environment. So the whole site is a nuclear wasteland anyway. It used to be 95% of the site went to a nuclear dump because they don't have a repository, right? So then reactor 3, of course, is way worse looking, which was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. So he's talking about 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. There's 4 buildings. There was actually 9, counting the reactors. That's 36 reactor cores. They were huge reactors. They were gigantic reactors. International Atomic Energy Agency University Partnership Program on Nuclear Law. So this is how they get themselves ingratiated into countries and then so-called Google Westinghouse is using artificial intelligence to fast-track nuclear reactors. And we're covering the most frightening story imaginable all the time of nuclear, and we're on their platforms. So what's the chance that they'll censor me because they're promoting nuclear? And the other anti-nuclear so-called people that are out there trying to educate the population. Google's clouds AI optimization will cut construction costs and time for 10 new reactors. This was interesting. Westinghouse announced earlier an $80 billion U.S. government-backed plan to start building 10 AP1000 by 2030. Well, how come you're not going to build small modular reactors? Why are you going to build massive AP1000s for? Is it because you haven't got a small modular reactor, I wonder? Well, that's right. Canadian small modular reactor they're building, the boiling water reactor X300 megawatts, is 50 feet higher than Fukushima's massive reactors, 240-foot building. They don't have it, right? They don't have a small modular reactor. And they're so desperate, they're just going to call it a small modular reactor. The truth doesn't matter. It's the nuclear industry. Yes, so that's 10 massive reactors they're talking about building. 10 massive reactors. Like, what do you do with all these crazy people? The nuclear industry has just got nothing but contempt for everybody. And it as far as the nuclear industry is concerned, they have a right to go out and lie to their heart's content. And the media put them up on a pedestal. Right? The media put them up on a pedestal. And so we don't have any medias whatsoever helping us. Not one. They have all the media on the planet regurgitating their incredibly dangerous fake narratives. It just doesn't seem fair to me. 24 years later, and anti-nuclears consider like, oh, well, do whatever you want. It's anti-nuclear. We don't care what she does to him. He has no rights. He's anti-nuclear. He's honest. We can't have honest people. Everybody knows that. Very scary. Where's that picture? There it is. Net zero needs nuclear. At net zero. At together is better. Shit, I gotta put that one in there. That's a really innocent sounding one, right? Together is better. And together is better. Yeah, nuclear's killing everything, yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the poll for a second. Has Fukushima nuclear meltdowns created more radioactive fallout than all meltdowns in history combined? Yeah, by many orders of magnitudes. You might have lost the common spent fuel pool, right? Because if you look up my video of 736 mystery pictures, they were released in 2021, and those pictures clearly are suggesting the common spent fuel pool was destroyed, and Reactor 6. Did I cover it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. But if you watched 736 mystery pictures, you'll get them all. I'm the only person I know on the planet that's ever covered that stuff, unfortunately. Let me put that right there so I can find it some other time. There's an emaciated whale. Can't remember, was that sperm whale? Yeah, there's 3 of them in PEI a couple of weeks ago. And she's the Canadian government spokesperson. Very pretty. And she said they don't know why the whales died, but if you look at the whales, severe emaciation, peanut head, the shoulder blades sticking up. There's no symmetrics. It's clearly emaciated. How are we doing here? Here we get a little bit more to get through. So, like, you got 80 years of the media telling you it's like a banana, right? Here's what Eisenhower had to say about United Nations. It was actually millions. It was 192 species of birds showed up dead on a migratory route, insect eaters. They were extremely emaciated, no muscle mass, no fat reserve. They just flew until they dropped. So these buildings lost their, 3 decades of inventories at the top of the building. So let's say a decade and a half instead of 3 decades. Let's lowball it. Young Jong Il is a professor at nuclear and quantum engineering at CAS, which is South Korea's most prestigious institution, said the water at the site was 2.2 grams of tritium. That's all it got out of these buildings, and they had it in tanks. And that if everything in the buildings got out, and it did, it was equal to throwing 3 grams of sugar into the ocean. Like throwing a sugar cube of 3 grams into the sea. I launched research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia. The tidal zones were wiped out. It's just really sad, that we live in a world where everybody's a victim of a single industry, where every species is a victim of a single industry. And this industry has many different ways to poison us. It's not an accident that almost every nuclear plant is surrounded by farms. That's not an accident. It's an agenda. In Japan, there was an extra 865,000 cancers in the first year. Oh yeah, this video is BBC in 2013. The 1,000 tanks, he said, were filled already in 2013. The Arriva system wasn't finished the ELP system wasn't finished till 2015. They have TEPCO here saying they have no control over water into the ocean or from the site, no control over anything on the site. TEPCO coming up.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground...
I'm sorry, let me fix that. I don't know why that was high.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep
really
beneath
important.
the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
That's an interesting view right there. At street level, you see the 10 by 16 sheets of steel. It's on top of pavement, on top of cement, on top of pavement, and on top of steel sheets that they built up because of the China syndrome, right? From reactor 1 and 2. You can see reactor 4, like to build this contraption off-site and assemble it remote-controlled cranes. But that's reactor 4. That's what's underneath. They didn't ban the food in 14 prefectures because it's like a banana or flying on an airplane. So did Fukushima release more radiation than all nuclear meltdowns in history combined? Sadly, yeah. 1 million becquerels, that was a xenon-133, which of course is going to be twice as much, 135. 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131. That was from the fuel. So it wasn't, like a lot of the 131s that they're talking about is actually curium isotopes, very high energetic. So rather than say curium, they'll put down iodine-131, because when you look it up, it got a short half-life, right? 220 million atoms of iodine-129. You know, 131, for every 131 produced, there's 10 times more 132, and 30 times more 133, and 31 times more iodine-129. The 132 iodine, 133 iodine are 9 times more effective than iodine-131, and iodine-131 is incredibly effective ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of every species in humans. A 50 million year half-life. This was a 23-day fallout of cesium-137. This is the French government spike. This is not opinion or conjecture. This was a spike of 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, what it was pre-Fukushima, of cesium-137. So that plume is going to have all of those isotopes into it, all of these isotopes, all of those isotopes into it, and all of those isotopes into it. And it's nothing like sugar, you horrible creature, whoever you are. The China syndrome, this is about 50 times normal speed. The Earth is cracked open, we knew, in 6 places where the doses were at 10 sieverts per square meter or something. And they say 10 sieverts an hour, but you're talking about a plume that is 2 or 3 miles. You have to evacuate the site, and everything it touches is incredibly radioactive forever. So this is why only the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. This is one of the actual videos from the. This is speeded up about 18 times or something. Let me see if I got it sped up even further. Now this is, I'm going to speed it up to 200. So it's 36 times regular speed. Now, when this plume takes off here, this was doing this for years, by the way. This is China syndrome. When this happens, if you're in that plume, that's instant death. That's thousands of sieverts in that plume. But we know that the steam coming out of the ground in 6 places with 10 sieverts an hour. Right, the Riva system, this was pictures released February 11, 2013. They were just building it. And almost at the end of 2014, they were hoping they had the kinks out of it, might be able to get it to work. But you can't filter, like you're pouring water over a nuclear meltdown, fuel particulates are coming back up. That's the allegations. Like the truth was that they had drilled a bunch of wells around the site. These are just holes into the ground. And they take water samples from that. They have pumps, and then they pump up the water. And that goes into a container, and they test it for radiation, see what's going into the ocean. And they might bring up, whatever. And that was the idea of the tanks was going to accommodate that water. So what were you going to do with it? Were you going to throw it in the tanks? That was the theory. But you're talking about fuel particulates. Fuel pellets broke up into pieces. So if that settles into the tank, you're going to have a chain reaction, a nuclear meltdown, a criticality event in the tank, because you're going to have gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas together. And what happens in that environment is gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas emitters, pulses of energy, don't mix. They run into each other and change direction each almost at the speed of light. And that creates what's known as a Bremsstrahlung effect, because it was discovered by a German, but we call it an X-ray. IAEA experts back then predicted the cesium would be carried across the Pacific to the west coast. That's ocean-borne now. Well, no, all the ocean and all the ponds and freshwater worldwide were farmland, all landmass, all oceans worldwide were contaminated in 23 days. And this is absurd amount we're talking. This was a pulse event. The reactors really did blow up. They really did lose their inventories. It has nothing to do with bananas at all, ever. It's not acceptable to suggest that it does or could or would or has. This is Sellafield. I was saying earlier you should look up these pictures from a satellite. This is 1,000 buildings. They reprocessed the fuel from all the reactors there in other countries. Same as France's Le Hague does. Why is it surrounded by farms? Why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms except for a couple? Because the radioactive can't contain the emissions. It's an agenda to poison everybody, everywhere, all the time. And they know everything there is to know. Very little is known about nuclear fallout and human effect. That's simply the furthest thing from the truth. They've studied every species on this planet. All of these studies were damaged to something from radiation, from ionizing radiation. And they know there's millions and millions and millions and millions of studies like this. They know everything about every species. They studied every facet of the ecosystem. So why would you put these disease factories in the middle of prime farmland? What's the carbon net zero footprint of that madness? You're poisoning everybody worldwide. The medical care, the pharmaceuticals, the surgeries. What's the net zero? What's the climate change or carbon footprint of all of this? Carbon footprint was a public relation campaign to demonize you. The United Nations was like, haha, perfect. We'll use that one. We'll use global warming, Wallace Brocker's study. We'll use James Hansen's climate change. And we'll use Miles Allen's net zero. And we'll use that to bludgeon the entire planet into submission. I happen to care enough. I tried to find it. They won't tell you, oh, no, the science is settled. That's what I got everywhere I went. Don't worry, the science is settled. But what do you mean the science is settled? I want to see it. What is it? Well, it's Wallace Brocker, James Hansen, BP oil, carbon footprint, and Miles Allen net zero. Why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? Well, it's a secret. Really? It's not a secret anymore, is it? You won't find anybody talking about that anywhere. And look at all these studies why you wouldn't want to do it. Why would you grow food in a nuclear wasteland, which is a nuclear power plant? It's the worst thing you do because you know all the food's going to suck up the radiation. It's not maybe, it's not perhaps, it's not at some point. It's immediate and it's catastrophic to everybody in your supermarkets. I don't do this because I'm going to get all the views and everything else. I do it because I want the world to have a conversation, and I'm going to force it out there if that's what it takes. Nuclear has no place on our planet. It's the opposite. It's the enemy of everything with replicating cells. It attacks everything with replicating cells. And it loves poisoning your food sources and the animals' food sources and the species' food sources. So why would you want that on your planet? What would you call? And the people that know this are calling it, saying it's like a banana. It's harmless, like a potato chip. You know why they're saying it's harmless? Because it's not harmless. Like, you know, the pictures I showed you, the journalists on top of Reactor 4, compared to what Reactor 4 actually looks like alongside of it. Why are they doing that? Why are they pretending on a building that doesn't exist? Because everything I'm showing you tonight is true. I'm not a bad person for being honest, unless you're talking to a pro-nuclear. The radioactive fallout from Fukushima has been going on for a lot longer, and plutonium killed all the animals in all the experiments. Why do that? 144 beagle dogs, majority of them died of bone tumors. And that the biggest byproduct of fuel rod is not plutonium, it's curium isotopes. Forget the alpha, it's curium isotopes. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium and lasts just as long. And so that's the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fallout. The neptunium decays to plutonium. Every 2.5 days for 10 times, 25 days. But that plutonium plume has more curium into it than plutonium. You can pretend I'm wrong, but I'm not. How did we do? I think we made it, didn't we? Oh, we made it. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow, great weekend, if that's possible anymore. Here's the journalist's typical attitude after Fukushima.
My name is Martin Fackler. I am the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And the title, as we just heard, was Challenges and Opportunities After the Fukushima Nuclear Disaster, this crisis management. And the question of what do you tell your public? You know, I mean, do you tell them that there's a serious nuclear accident, or do you play it down? Do you try to cover it up?
Tell the slaves they got guns. Do you really think these people are pretending they're on top of Reactor 4 because they're bored or because they think they're on Reactor 4? They faked it. So ABC, the biggest media in Australia, if not Anna Karenina, who the puppet they use, not Rupert Winfield Hayes, but BBC, not Seth Dorn, the senator's son, but CBS. Not Seth Dorn. He was just the useful idiot that they can count on. And then every university had to participate in that lie for that lie to work. Every university had to participate in it. Every pro-nuclear, every big shot pro-nuclear YouTuber, for instance, and Facebook and Twitter, and they had to participate in that lie for that lie to work. They couldn't come out and counter that lie because the lie don't work anymore. I'm just, like my research expeditions for 6 years, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean to see if the species recovered back to what they were in 2011 to your left. They didn't recover. It's an extinction event. Fukushima is an extinction event. I know James got a new video. Let's bring that up. We got to close the poll shortly. Hello, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Oh, we got 29 votes. Thank you so much, everyone. Has Fukushima nuclear meltdown created more radioactive fallout than all meltdowns in history combined? Something to think about. James just posted this a short while ago, an hour ago or something. And this is James Lucid on YouTube. I put a link in the description, but if you're here after, it won't show up for 12 hours. Come back in 12 hours. So we're going to watch this and listen to it. We'll see you. I was kind of considering doing a show tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day for Conference of Parties. So actually, just check back if you're interested in another show tomorrow. I might do a random show, because it's the last day. Or I might just do the collection on Sunday. I'm going to do that anyway, but I might challenge them again tomorrow. Who knows? Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next Madness presentation. Nightmare. Take care.
Over 10 years down, they cut it back on, yeah. Plan to restart again, rash state on, yeah. Leg get dragged when the hinges slack. First crew in, they find them rats. Rats chillin' off big KK to K heat. Rats been send reactor shut down. One leg still about to break a rail. Tail wrap tight, wear bridge spotters, yeah. Paper suit slider, 2-man row. One grip heat, one watch door slow. Call barrel wire by a couple of twists. Rat crib sitting by that purge miss. Boy rig tight by Unisys Bay. Then they cut out, just ticks on play. Shop talk say something got bit. Shift law, no reunit got hit. First day back, whole crew side eye. Rat shit show, on the cable tray. Rats in the big KK, shoot through the lot. Rats in the big KK, move down the court. Rats in the big KK, shoot one watch some more. Rats in the big KK, deep in the floor. Rats in the big KK, very real deep. Rats in the big KK, back by the lead. Rats in the big KK, damn hard it boy. Rats in the big KK, crawl on still steel. Rats in the big KK, very deep. Rats in the big KK, back by the lead. Reset squad sliding late as hell. Drop kick down by Intel well. Control glass, stay green, boy, wrist straight. Spin fuel pool, got a rash popping on. Paper suit cut, left pad, dry cash. Pete don't run with a jacket crack. Ain't no hoe, ain't no chat. Supervisor, the man cap that rat. Air ain't right in the containment room. Rat learn what a paper suits would do. Saw one in the spin fuel pond. Swing caught the blade like I can do no wrong. Seen one stare when the main went up. Still lurking when the whole crew dipped off. Don't mention what cut through vents. Just clean up, keep quiet, don't flake. Rats in the big KK, shoot through the lock. Rats in the big KK, move down the court. Rats in the big KK, shoot one watch some more. Rats in the big KK, deep in the flow. Rats in the big KK, very real deep. Rats in the big KK, back by the lead. Rats in the big KK, very bleed. Rats in the big KK, crawl on shoe steel. Rats in the big KK, very real deep. Rats in the big KK, back by the lead. Rats live rent free in the big KK. Starting the plan won't make them leave. Rats in the big KK. Rats in the big KK.
Rats of the BKK is, I got to get in the habit of looking in the description first. This is a song he wrote about Japan set to prove to restart. We know that the new reactor they're building in the United Kingdom is going to be like $38 billion. Is infested with rats. It's not even built. This plant's been shut down since Fukushima. They're about to reopen. And you can be sure it's full of rats. So that was a good catch, James. That was a really good video. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. And I'll see everybody on the next one. Somewhere, somehow. Take care.